Was she keeping exotic animals in her basement? Did she have a white tiger tied to the radiator? Perhaps she was the leader of a cult that wore lace blouses, talked about maritime history, and had a penchant for sherry and cards. This was too exciting. What could Ethel's secret be? She wasn't particularly surprised that Dan was at Ethel's. He was so dedicated to his parishioners that he would spend all hours of the day and night nipping in for visits and helping them in different ways. Alice had witnessed him putting up shelves, digging a vegetable patch, and pulling a carrier bag out of Mrs. Talbot's collie's bottom, a sight she would happily never see again. As she reached Ethel's house, she crept around the side, checking to make sure no one saw her. She wasn't sure why she was doing this, but it seemed in keeping with the mystery that Dan had woven. Coast clear, she darted through the back gate and let herself in through the kitchen door. The lights were all on, but it felt weird entering someone's house without them being present to let you in. The house was much as she expected it to be, the decor reflecting Ethel's age and tastes. Prints of tall ships lined the lemon-painted walls and a jug of plastic irises decorated the windowsill. Alice manoeuvred herself past the small kitchen table, complete with a rather lonely lace-place setting for one, and headed into the utility room. There, just the other side of the washing machine, was a door frame with steps leading down, and as she peered down them, she saw what looked like the locked door that Dan had told her about. Even though the steps were lit, there was something incredibly creepy about going down the stairs. The ominous door at the bottom didn't help. Alice didn't know if it was because she watched way too many horror movies or just because any woman of sense steered well clear of a basement. It was known safety tip number 1. She took a deep breath and headed down. "Is that you, Alice?" Ethel's voice came from behind the door. "Yep, here now. I'll have you out any second. No need to worry," she called back, making her tone extra perky, both to calm Ethel and reassure her own brain that there was no serial killer with a sharp knife and evil intent lurking behind the door. Just a very dishy vicar. There was a noisy flurry and whispered conversation coming from the basement as Alice reached out to the door handle. She wiggled the key in the heavy old lock. "It will be fine, honestly," she heard Dan reassure Ethel before raising his voice to address Alice. "Ethel wants you to promise not to tell a soul about—" "Not a soul!" Ethel's voice broke over the top of Dan's, loud and very firm. "Yep, right. A soul about what you see down here once that door is open." "Promise!" Alice was now intrigued to the point of bursting. What was in there? She was going to be so disappointed if it was merely some washing baskets and wine bottles. "This key isn't turning. Is there a knack?" She wiggled the door, but she was convinced it would take a marauding army to break down. Heavy wood and metal brackets made it look as if it should be inside a castle somewhere on the continent, Transylvania perhaps, not in an elderly lady's house on the outskirts of Penmenna village. "You have to pull it quite tight towards you whilst putting your foot on the bottom metal plate bit and pushing. That seemed to work," Dan explained. "It is a bit tricky," his companion added. "A bit tricky, Ethel? I'm beginning to think this is a plan to make me fall over whilst you two have a good giggle. Hang on." With her top half pulling, her bottom half pushing, and her hand doing a lot of wiggling, Alice managed to unlock the door and push it open, falling through red-faced and a little breathless. That had been some job. "Keep your foot in the door, or lean back against it so it doesn't slam shut again. That's how we both got locked in here. We'll run out of friends to call if you get trapped too." Alice rammed her back against the door to keep it wedged open and, taking a deep breath, exhaled in Dan and Ethel's direction before having a quick look at the room. Oh, wow. She blinked. Nope, still the same room. She tried blinking 3 times and taking another look. Still the same. It would appear that the door to the room was a fair indicator of what was inside. For sweet, octogenarian Ethel, currently standing beside her wearing a dainty white broderie anglaise blouse and a penitent smile, had a dungeon in her house. Not a dungeon as in a cobbled room complete with a straw pallet and a chain hanging from the wall. That would have been less shocking.